Hello and welcome to Beyond the Bio. This week I'm joined by Jude Daunt, who's founder of the Unbreakable Mindset, which is a methodology that transforms clients' mindsets, allowing them to remove the constraints and mental barriers for them to get out of their own way and thrive. Jude has spent over a decade working one-to-one with clients that include entrepreneurs, CEOs, Olympic athletes and celebrities. She's now sharing her work by allowing others to become certified, accredited life coaches in the Unbreakable Mindset Academy. I've invited Jude on the show because she is so good with all things mindset. And one of the challenges that I think people have when they're raising their profile or working on their personal brand is overcoming imposter syndrome, worrying about what people will think about them. And this is something that we just need to get over. So who better to invite on to chat through this topic than Jude? So welcome to Beyond the Bio, Jude Daunt. Obviously, this podcast is all about raising your profile. One of the barriers that I see and hear is people saying that they feel like a total imposter whenever they put themselves out there and they're worrying that people are going to judge them. Tell us about your own experiences with imposter syndrome and how you're going about helping people to deal with it.
So the work that I do, I class myself as a mindset coach. I trained in performance coaching. I've got an academy where people train under me to become mindset coaches. And when I first started out in retail, my biggest goal was to work in a shop on a till, right? Because I didn't believe in myself. I genuinely thought I was the thick one in the family. And lo and behold, I got my dream. I worked in a shop on a till. Well done me. But I was also really good at the thing that I was passionate about, which was merchandising. And then by the time I was 23, I had a team of 5 people, a cute little company car, and my area was like Scotland down to Birmingham and Ireland.
Wow.
And I was 23.
Some area, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was 23. And obviously that was my area, but I was regional, so I had a team underneath me that had their own areas within that. But if you think back, my story was, as long as I just work in a shop on a till, I'll be fine. Like, didn't even want to pass my test because I thought, what's the point? I'll never be able to buy a car. And now all of a sudden, I'm 23. And as much as obviously it did come natural to us, what I was doing, there was part of us where, I could be driving to Peterborough and I'd have 3.5 hours of driving thinking, oh my God, what happens if I get there and I don't know what I'm talking about? And it was like pit of my tummy sickness. And I would say, I'm 43 now. That was 20 years ago. I don't know if I knew the language for imposter syndrome back then. But what I would say, it was almost, the imposter syndrome was the end of my, what shall we say, not journey, but my time with anxiety and depression. It had kind of hit its peak. It had got so bad, I then had an eating disorder. And when I thought, I can't do this anymore, and I saw a coach, because I tried every other therapy and it all failed as nothing worked. And somebody had said, I think such and such has seen a coach, why don't you give it a whirl? And I spoke to the lady and I said, I'm struggling with an eating disorder. That's all I knew was the outcome. I didn't really know the cause. And she massively helped me in terms of carving out a different mindset. And then my trajectory after that was completely different. I didn't realise I had the power to question my own thoughts. I didn't realise I had the ability to be able to almost kind of step out of myself to go, right, is this perception or is this reality, what you're thinking right now? But in terms of imposter syndrome, I think for me, it almost saved me in a way because it was so bad and so crippling that I had to do something about it to be able to get to the other side. And I think sitting in front of you now, as much as that is a huge part of my journey, my story, and a real low point, if somebody said to me, and it's funny, one of the girls in our academy was working through the course material and she booked in a mentoring session and she said, I'm just really struggling. What happens if somebody comes to us with imposter syndrome? Because I know I've got that in my job now. And I was like, it's dead easy. And for me to be able to say that, what I didn't want to do was answer your first question and go, it's really easy to turn imposter syndrome around. What I wanted the listener to hear is, I get how debilitating it is. I get how crushing it is to feel like you are so worried that you're going to mess up, that you're sitting around a table in a meeting and you're worried you're going to say something stupid and then everyone's going to realise everyone's going to know, actually, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And that fear, that shame, that potentially that could happen. And I guarantee everyone listening, it's probably never happened. There's probably never been a case of that. It's your fear about it rather than the actual event happening. And the reason I would say it's really easy to turn it around is because when we take the emotion out of something, you're just left with facts. So there's a fact of either you are really good at your competencies or you've got growth room. Yeah. And how amazing that in businesses most days we do have an assessment, appraisal, objectives that you can set people. You can base that on their competencies. Like there's ways where we take the emotion out of it, and it's not either you're good or bad at your job. It's like, this is your strengths and these are your development areas. And I don't know the majority of your listeners, but if you're business owners, you kind of forget to do that work on yourself, even though you might have worked in corporate and you might have been through that at a young age. You kind of forget to do a bit of work on yourself to go, right, hang on a minute. You just power on thinking, I'll hope it'll get easier. I hope it'll get easier, rather than going, right, actually, do you know what? I'm a bit rusty at that area, or I need to work on that area, or I know I've been ignoring that for a while and actually it's something that needs my attention and it's a development area I'm working on and I'm totally aware of it, but I'm going to do it. And it's having that ability to be vulnerable enough with yourself to be honest, to go, do you know what? I'm going to stack all this evidence up as to where I am good, but I'm also going to do the work on the areas where I know I'm not good.
Mm. Do you still get imposter syndrome now?
Do you know what? It's funny, as I'm sat here with you, and where it showed up was when you asked me to do a talk at City Ladies, right? And that's really interesting. So most of the time, I crack on, I'm fine. You know, there's many things that are parts of my day job, working one-to-one with clients, working in the academy, and also our third business, which is more corporate-based. So there's loads of things that I do, and I just kind of crack on and I do it. But when you asked me to do City Ladies, and it was a speaking gig, and there was no way for me to have slides, I was like feeling really, really nervous. My legs were shaking all through that speaking gig, right? But previous to that, I've run retreats. It's never been an issue for me talking in front of people. I used to do a lot in my old job and have to talk, you know, the head of Arcadia, I'd have to walk him around things and do public speaking and present. And it never bothered me. And I think I realised, I had a crutch for a lot of the time. I'd have notes in front of me. I'd have screens. I'd have slides. So when you asked me to do that, I realised that was a huge development area for me, to be able to stand up in front of people and riff. Yeah. Basically, just like what we're doing now, just riff and not worry.
Do you think there's something healthy about putting yourself in those situations?
Yes.
Though?
Oh my God. And what that meant was that, one, was it the best one I've ever done? Probably not, but it wasn't the worst. And then when I got asked to do something, and it was a room full of about 150 people, and they asked me if I needed a screen, and I was like, no, I'm a dab hand at this now. I've done 2 of them and yours was one of them. So I said no. And then on the day I was like,
wish I'd said yes.
God, I wish I'd said yes, because this isn't just a quick talk. This was a 50-minute presentation. So what I did, and this is something that I would definitely advise people to do who've got imposter syndrome, we feel like we have to be perfect all the time. And it's really okay to go, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. Or can you help me? And when I stood in front of those people, I had made slides on my iPad. And at the last minute, I had asked for a screen, but it wasn't possible. So I got up there and I said to everyone watching, I was like, I need to explain something to you. I was like, I got really cocky when I said yes to this, because I thought, I've done this before. I'm good at this now, talking and riffing in front of you all. I went, but I realised this was 50 minutes and I want to make sure this is the best talk you will hear tonight. I can only do that if I've got some slides. I went, so I've got some really nice slides that you will never see, but they're on my iPad and I'm going to be looking at them. So if you see me looking up here and looking down, it's because I don't want to miss where I'm at. And I am slightly ADHD, I'm perimenopausal. Those 2 things are going to make me go pew, pew, and forget words. I went, so just bear with us. it's going to be amazing, but you're going to see us looking down. So what I did was I put the thing that I was fearful of them going,
What's she
just
doing?
looking at her iPad all the time. And I told them that's what I was going to do.
Great.
And I think in those examples, you know, I'm not frightened to say to my accountant, I don't understand what you mean. Because it's not my zone of genius. Like, I don't need to be an expert in numbers. I don't need to be an expert in Google ads, Facebook ads. I just need to know top level information so that I can deliver what I need to do to get the end result. But I'll tell you what I do need to be an expert in, public speaking. That would be really weird if I kept saying, well, I'm not good at it, but it's fine. It's not fine. In my job, I definitely need to be an expert in public speaking because that is how I'm going to get myself out, my brand out there so people know what I'm doing. So it is something I have to get better at. And actually, that talk that I did for the Grammars event, which it was probably the best ones I've ever done. And it didn't have slides, but it did have me with an iPad. So it's kind of jumping between, okay, so what do I need to do to make it better every time? And like, I don't know whether you did this in corporate, but after every project, having a wash-up meeting is like an amazing thing to do. It's so quick, it's so easy. And you would normally do that if you had a team of people and you were working on a project. You sit down after something, you do a wash-up meeting. What went well? What would you do differently next time? What do you think you need to do that wasn't done? What could you add in? What could you take out? All of that type of thing. If you do that with yourself, it's really, really good. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a real kind of process of like sitting down with a format and a printed out spreadsheet to fill in. It could just be
some journaling or reflections.
Yeah. Like, you know, my guys starting out when they're first coaching with their clients, one of the things that I encourage them to continue doing, it's something they have to do as part of their accreditation, is to do a reflection. How did it go well after the session? What would you do differently next time? What do you think your client was thinking? All that type of thing. But to continuously do that all the time means you're so in tune with your client, so you know what you need to deliver next time round from a tool point of view, from thinking about where they're at, where do they need to get to. But it's such an amazing tool for growth to be able to do that reflection.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, you know, think back to my corporate days, we absolutely did used to have wash-up meetings for everything. And, you know, it's probably something that I definitely do less of. That said, on the theme of public speaking, which is definitely something that's important for me to be doing for my business, I have some signature keynote talks now. So I've got, you know, some slide decks that if someone books me to speak on a particular topic, I go, right, I've got the slide deck for that. And then I'll take bits out depending on how much time I've got, whatever. Whenever I come back from doing a talk, I always look at the slide deck again and move things around and change it based on how that went. Yeah. And also just thinking about the public speaking thing, because I was just thinking of another conversation that I had on this podcast about public speaking, about getting better at it. I had Ash Jones on a couple of months ago. So Ash is the guy that's responsible for Stephen Bartlett's brand. They work together at Social Chain. Really, really interesting guy. And I didn't actually want to talk to him about Stephen Bartlett, but he brought Stephen up on a few examples. And one of the things that I asked him, and it was really interesting around how Stephen is such a confident public speaker. And I said, did he have any training? Like, what happened there? Because he was talking about how awkward he was when they first used to vlog. And his answer was that it was that whole 10,000 hours thing. He literally just went and spoke at everything for a year or so and just got better and better and better. And I can massively relate to that. You know, when I did my, you know, you talk about your legs shaking. My moment for that was 100% when I did my TEDx talk. I literally, even now, every time I talk about it, I want to be sick because I can remember that feeling and just thinking, oh my God, and imposter syndrome big time, and just literally wanting to be sick. Yeah, it's interesting. So I think there's something there around how you reflect so that you can then be better next time and being quite honest with yourself around what could have been better and then making those changes, but also as well around the prep. So, you know, in hindsight, that big corporate talk you did probably would have been more helpful to have had those slides. Okay, right, well, you'll know next time. And whether you refer to them or not, they're there and there's some level of support, aren't they? Thinking about imposter syndrome in the context of people really putting themselves out there with things like social media. So people like us, we need to be visible on social media on whichever platform or platforms we choose. What are your thoughts around being visible on social media when you're having those kind of anxious feelings or feeling like an imposter? Do you just have to just bloody put your big girl pants on and do it? Or?
Do you know what? It's funny, again, I say this to the students in the academy because they obviously, have probably never been in front of social media, and now not only are they putting themselves out there, but they're having to tell everyone this is what I'm doing, I'm a coach, and really showing themselves as an expert. A couple of things I always say to them. One, if it's shit, nobody's going to see it because the algorithm wouldn't show it anyway, so you just wouldn't get the traction, so therefore it wouldn't go anywhere. Two, you will need to get comfortable with the camera anyway. You're not going to just show up and it's going to be amazing and it's going to go viral. Three, there's so many nuances with social media. Like, I can post something that I think is gold at 5 o'clock on a night time and it won't go anywhere. I could post the same thing 6 o'clock in the morning and it could go somewhere. It's something that is so out of your control, where to bring it back into your control, I think the only thing that you have within you, the power, is to like it. So you've just got to figure out, what do you like? And that's the first starting point of anything that you're doing, right? What do you consume and why? And what is it about it that you like? So is it that you like people who are talking to the camera? What do you like about it when they're talking to the camera? How can you get comfortable with it? Would you rather spend 100 hours just talking to your camera all the time until you're confident that you want to put that out? There's ways in which to put yourself out there on social media that's comfortable to you to start off. There's plenty of accounts out there where it's just zooming in on a cup of coffee, but it's got a really good quote about it. There's ways in which to start out so you don't feel so vulnerable, but you have to start somewhere.
So if someone is, just thinking about our listeners and people listening to the show interested in their personal brand and raising their profile, if imposter syndrome is holding them back from doing the talk on the stage, posting on social media, starting their own podcast or going on someone else's, all these different activities that we're talking about every week to raise your profile, what advice would you give them if it's imposter syndrome that's holding them back?
You've got to start on one. So whichever one it is, start on one and then figure out why you're uncomfortable with it. So, for example, with public speaking, I think for me, there was still a limiting belief in my head of, you're not smart enough, you're not academic, you didn't go to university. There's a story that I used to tell myself that I've overcame because I've done the work on it and I've achieved a lot. But that will come back in various guises that I have to be aware of. And I don't think I was aware that that was the thing that was making me feel uncomfortable, is to, who am I to get up and talk in front of them? Now, that was fine when I had my slides, because my slides were my crutch. I could talk about it. And I think for me to get more comfortable with public speaking without slides, can I just point out, I had to figure out what is the area that is the struggle. And it's about getting into the nitty gritty of pulling it apart. And I think for me, it was like, right, okay, you're presuming, Jude, that you need to go up there and not have anything. And that's not the case. Like, I could still go up there and have a card in my hand with bullet points if I wanted to. So one, it's doing the uncomfortable thing. It's understanding, where's the growth needed? What do you need to do to become amazing at it? Do the work. What do you love and why? So if I like somebody who is a personal speaker, consume it. Consume their talks, consume their content, whatever it is. Then the next part of it is go, right, well, what do I need to do to be as good as that? Okay, well, I need content. Okay, what are you going to write? Have a start, a middle, and an end. Plan it like you would anything else, but do the bloody work. Like, sit down and realise that actually the only thing that's going to come from it, that if you want it to be amazing, is if you put the time in and the work in. And you know what? Might not be great the first time you do it, but at least you did it. And now you've got data. Like, anything we do is data, but if you don't do it, you've got no data. So if you do the first one and it's not great, you've got data to understand what could you do better next time.
Cool. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Jude. It's been awesome. If people want to connect with you, is Instagram the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, Instagram. And one of the things that we've been working on, and Julie will kill us if I don't say this, is the thing that we first started talking about was obviously imposter syndrome. And a lot of your listeners will be able to afford, working with me one-to-one and be able to overcome mindset, insecurities, limiting beliefs, anxiety triggers, etc. And one of the things that Julie and I really wanted to do was to have something that the old me would have been able to utilise. And what we've done is built this amazing coaching platform called Activated Mindset Online that companies can buy into to give their staff this high level of coaching where it's affordable for them. So every member of their team could overcome their limiting beliefs, their overwhelm, their procrastination, their imposter syndrome through this platform that we've got. And it's amazing, and it's something that is very much a passion project for me, because I think had I have not found the coach who completely changed my life, it was a really dark place. I know we've kind of, obviously made it not necessarily lighthearted, but, it was depression that had ended in an eating disorder for me. And had I have not seen that coach, I wouldn't be sat here today. I don't know what that would have looked like for me, but it was huge. And I think for us to be able to do it in a way where companies could give real support to their team is something I'm really passionate about.
We'll pop a link for that as well. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you're serious about growing your profile, take our free profile assessment quiz to see where you're at right now and get hints and tips on how to improve your score. You'll find the link to the quiz in the show notes. If you've enjoyed the episode, it would be mint if you'd subscribe, like, and leave a review. See you next Monday.